The B.S Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the B.S Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The B.S Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The B.S Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
All right, third podcast of the week. We had to have him on. He's one of the top 5 most excited people that I know about the President Barack Obama era. And also, this was the first podcast that I think I ever coordinated on Facebook, mainly because I lost his email address and I couldn't find it. J.A Adande, what's happening?
What's up? You know, you can still text me. Texting is like gone away. Everybody's doing BlackBerry Messenger, Facebook, whatever. But I do want to issue a warning to everybody listening there. Please do not send a friend request, because if I don't know you, I'm not going to add you. I mentioned my Facebook account on Around the Horn one time. I got bombarded with about 2,000 friend requests. So just save you the time, save me the time, and don't send a request unless you know me. Thank you.
Why don't you make your settings private? Because you're trying to meet the ladies?
No, I mean, you want some people to find you, just not everyone.
Haven't you found
Is there a way
everyone?
you could just set it so that, no one who doesn't have any friends with you can't find you?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good way to determine. If you don't have any friends in common, chances are I'm not going to add you.
That's a good point. And I also enjoy when it suggests what friends you should add, and it's always people you don't want to add. It's like, oh, yeah,
Exactly.
that's that
I was
dude.
looking at my list lately. I'm like, wow, it really has a low opinion of me, because, none of these people are people that, I want to be friends with. You might think I want to be friends with on Facebook, but you don't know me very well, because none of these people are people I want in my life.
The Facebook friend suggester is right up there with the CBSSports.com fantasy guru who tells me how many points my guy is going to get, and I'm like, there's no way Steve Preston's going to score 18 points. Go away.
Well,
Go away,
there was one
fantasy
year I was
guru.
in a league, and we were drafting online, and I had the number 1 pick, and for some reason I couldn't log in time, and
Yeah.
so I got Sean Marion with the number 1 overall pick. Thank you very much. I think we finished in last place.
Oh, that's fantastic. I did, did this league with Matthew Berry online. Like, it was like an auction on ESPN.com. Our auction system is secretly like one of the great secrets of internet anything right now. Like, it's fantastic. So we did this auction. It was great. I immediately emailed my friends, look, we have to do an NBA auction. You guys will love this. Just trust me on this. 2 days later, we do it. One of my friends is at work, gets knocked offline, and so each time the computer suggests the next player, so it has these settings that, you don't, settings for that if you're not there, the computer will pick for you. So we don't know what's happening, because all of a sudden he's bidding $24 for Jason Kidd. We're like, $24 for Jason Kidd? What the hell? And he got back on 10 minutes later and had like 3 terrible bids on his team. It was really funny.
So the computer has like a Hall of Fame setting. Like, this guy's going to the Hall of Fame. I better bid him up, even though he's old and everybody scores on him now.
Yeah, the computer, I think, was using 2004 settings for Jason Kidd, unfortunately. Why? Now, you're a rational ESPN personality, unlike Rick Bucher and Mark Stein. Am I crazy, or was that the worst non-Isaiah trade of this decade? These guys are claiming it was still a decent trade for Dallas, and Nowitzki's getting more out of him or they're getting more out of Nowitzki than they would have with Harris, all this spin control. You're an objective party. That's a terrible trade, right?
I don't think it's the all-time worst. So were they going to win a championship with Devin Harris?
They almost did.
Probably not.
Wait,
but they were going
did.
the other way. I think that window had closed. I didn't have a problem with that, because I think you needed to do something to shake it up. Did it work? Did it pan out? No. Was this a long-term thing, or, they stuck with his contract the next 8 years? No. I mean, I'm not sure I'd do it again, but I don't put it down as one of the all-time worst trades. And also, I don't think you knew Devin Harris was going to be this good either.
Why?
So,
He was the third year in the
I'm not
league.
going to kill the Mavericks on this one.
It was his third year in the league. He was a young point guard, and if we've seen anything proven over and over the course of NBA history, it's that you cannot give up on young point guards too soon. You just can't. Yet they did. Like, I thought the move at the time was to fire Avery Johnson, who clearly needed to go after the 2007 playoffs. They hung on to him for an extra year. But, even if you were arguing just Devin Harris for Jason Kidd alone, I think that's a bad trade. But then when you throw in the 2 number 1s unprotected in 2010,
yeah, that's what really hurts. And although I'm not that crazy about draft picks either. They do. They eat up a little bit of space against your salary cap. I'm always bigger on going for the known versus the unknown. And Jason Kidd was a guy, he was proven. He was a guy who'd gotten teams to the NBA Finals before, twice. Had Devin Harris done that? Was Devin Harris proven in this league at that time? No. So I really don't have that big an issue with it. If you put Devin Harris on the Dallas Mavericks right now, does he flourish as much? I doubt it because, you got to defer some to Dirk Nowitzki. In a place like New Jersey, I'm sure, Vince Carter doesn't mind having nights off or, deferring to a guy like Devin Harris, so he's able to flourish. I'm not sure you'd see this Devin Harris in Dallas, and I don't think anybody had an idea anyone was going to see this Devin Harris.
But he was still an asset. He was a young point guard with a lot of potential with a really good contract. And beyond that, the Jason Kidd they acquired was the washed-up Jason Kidd. It wasn't the Jason Kidd from 02 and 03 and 04. It was the guy who couldn't guard anyone anymore.
Well, part of it,
wasn't
too,
the scorer.
One issue I have with it was that it wasn't, he wasn't necessarily a great fit. He didn't have a lot of guys that could run with him because he still wanted to run.
Yes.
And get out and, run the fast break. And he didn't have the team that was really suited to do that. And especially he didn't have the coach that was suited to do that because that wasn't Avery's style.
Yeah, and you know who pointed that out at the time? Your friend Bill Simmons. I was like, who is he going to run with? Eric Dampier? What was it? Him and Eric Dampier could be running 2 on ones together?
That might be the biggest mismatch ever. You got one of the all-time greatest passers and the guy with the worst hands ever seen in the NBA.
And a controlling coach with this point guard who is used to just doing his own thing and running his own show. It was a terrible idea. They should have fired Avery and then figured it out after that. So, all right. So, if that wasn't the worst non-Isaiah trade of this decade, then what was NBA?
Wow, worst non-Isaiah trade of this decade.
Probably the T-Mac one, right? The one.
T-Mac was bad. I don't know if I'll call it the worst, but I still really didn't like the Shaq trade for Phoenix, even though, he's having a better than expected season this year. But, just to change the dynamic of the team that greatly. And it took him from a team, I was talking about this from the other day, and you talked about this on the show too, just, you take away an injury here or suspension there, and, that team, you never know. You can't say for sure that team couldn't, at the very least, get to the finals. And, I still would have liked to have seen them try it that way instead of trying to be just like every other team in the league. And they're just very average now, because Shaq is having a resurgence. I think he should be in the All-Star team, but he's not a dominant player. Him in and of himself doesn't take you to the top of the league the way he once did. So, orienting your offense around Shaq, going to him every time down the court, the nights he does play, it's not going to get you that far. And it's also a lot easier to game plan for, when you're basically running an offense that's very similar to everyone else in the league, as opposed to, when you're playing, the Lakers or the Clippers one night, then you got to go to Phoenix for a back-to-back, and they're running something that you cannot simulate in practice at all. And I think that was worth like 10 points a game right there, the fact that other teams weren't used to that system. And now other teams can scout for it because, you just pop in a DVD of pretty much any team and they're running the same stuff.
All right, I have two counters. The first is that I think that system had already died before they made that trade, because the thing that made that system special was that they had all these 40% three-point shooters and Nash and then Amari or Boris Diaw or whoever was playing center, and it was a very unique style that was hard to stop. But once Grant Hill got in there, and, once Nash started slipping just a tiny bit and Barbosa wasn't the same guy and Marion's shot kind of went south, they just weren't that team anyway. So that'd be my first counter. Then the second one would be, look at what Shawn Marion's done since. And, a year later, if Phoenix offered Shaq to Miami for Marion and Banks, I think Miami says yes.
But do you put that all on Shawn Marion, or does it speak to, again, as you wrote about D'Antoni and what he's done for Nash in his career, and also I think you have to give Nash some credit too. I mean, that was a great system for Shawn Marion, who flourished, who had played well before D'Antoni and Nash got there, but
right.
He really flourished in that system, and he was much more suited for that style of play than for Miami. And I think if you saw Shawn Marion go to the right team, you'd see a bounce back, because it does say a lot about him that he can get numbers when they don't run plays for him, when he can't really attack off the dribble, but he can hit three-pointers, he can get you steals and get you rebounds and do a lot of things at that three position that you're not going to find.
I think he's washed up. I really do. I think he's like Tomlinson to me. Like he's just, for whatever reason, it happened early for him. I could see it happening last year, and that's one of the reasons I supported the trade. I was watching them and thinking, this guy just isn't as good anymore. I don't know what happened. For whatever reason, he peaked late 20s. And the fact that he was happy, I've written about this a million times, but the fact that he was happy to be traded from the best team in the West to the worst team in the East should give you a little, window on the mind of Sean Marion and what his priorities are.
And the guys at Phoenix will tell you, one of the reasons they did it was because, they were tired of that unhappiness in that system. So they'll tell you they improved regardless of what happens on the court. They improved with some of the chemistry and some of the locker room issues with that team just by having a guy or getting rid of a guy who wasn't that happy to be there.
But they now have this Amari issue. And he might be, you look pound for pound, contracts. I guess Elton Brand's contract is worse, but I think Amari is the most overrated guy in basketball right now. He is just he's a train wreck defensively. He's just a train wreck. And then offensively, for whatever reason, he's not as good as he was last year. I watched that Celtic game Monday night, and I know it was 4 games of 5 nights. They traveled, whatever excuse you want to use. But he had Brian Scalabrine on him, and he didn't score a field goal.
It was
how is that possible?
That was one of maybe the year's most awful performance by any team that is considered good. And
national TV.
I mean, the one thing that's scary is that, maybe if he were in a situation where he was the man and, he's made it clear he wants to be the number one guy. He said that I was in the locker room talking to him last year when the last game of the season against San Antonio. He's saying, he wants an offense like San Antonio has where they run everything through Duncan. He wanted everything run through him. That's not happening there. So you argue maybe, okay, if he's happier and there is in a situation where they're running an offense to him, maybe you get a better Amari Stoudemire. The scary part of that, though, is what happens if you make him your franchise guy, if you take him on as a free agent. He's in that big 2010 class as well, or if you trade for him before then. And what if he just turns out to not be able to do that? What if he's a guy that can't carry a team? And you're right, defensively, he's dreadful. And that's one thing Shaq does for them. He does give them a backup. It takes Amari away from having to guard the big guys, gives them, someone to recover and help when guys get by Amari. But can he be the centerpiece of your team? That'd be an interesting experiment. I want to see somebody try. Somebody who doesn't really have that much to lose, like a Indiana Pacers or something. Let's see what would happen if Amari is your guy, or bring him to the guy that drafted him, Brian Colangelo in Toronto.
I was just going to say that. You stole my point.
Send him up there.
You stole my point. Don't steal my point. I was going to follow whatever you're saying with that. Here's what I want.
We're working here, Bill. So
Here's
now you can develop and supplement my point.
I want Toronto and Phoenix to make the following trade. Amari Stoudemire and Leandro Barbosa for Chris Bosh and Anthony Parker in his expiring contract. And then, who's the other guy? So that would give them Amari, Barbosa. They'd have Calderon.
Somebody actually suggested that on my chat. So
you did?
Before I stole it from you, somebody, you could say, stole it from you first on my online chat last week.
So that would give them Calderon in the Nash role. It would give them Leandro and Amari. So basically they'd be on their way to recreating the 2007 Suns.
I want to see somebody do it, and it would be fun to see it tried in the Eastern Conference. Pacers, they play a high-powered offensive game. It's not working that well. But, I think if you put Amari and Calderon, I just don't – the problem is it's such a drop-off from Nash to Calderon. I think asking Calderon to be Nash is really asking too much.
They have one more guy who could have fit in that. Who were the 2007? It was Barbosa and Nash.
Yeah, Barbosa and Nash.
And then
Grant Hill. Yeah, Diallo.
And Marion, and that's the other piece of this move.
Yeah.
So you make that trade, and then you trade
Neil for Marion.
Yeah, and then you get Amari, Marion.
There you go.
Yeah, Barbosa.
I kind of like that just in and of itself. O'Neal for Marion. I know that's being talked about out there because you look at Miami, they really do need a big man. And if it doesn't work out, then O'Neal's off your cap in 2010. Miami's not going to do anything that's going to take them out of that pool. I think Riley, Miami's one of those teams that the free agent cap space really means something. Like Sacramento, Oklahoma City, they can create cap space, but, what does it really mean? But you've seen time and time again, when Miami has cap space, guys are going to sign there.
Yes.
They want everything that goes with being in Miami. So, their cap space counts much more than other people's cap space. So they're well aware of that. And, I think they'll be very active, very interesting to watch in 2010. So, you can bring in O'Neal. You have a big man, Dwayne Wade doesn't have to drive the basket every single time. It relieves Beasley. Beasley's never going to be an inside presence for them. And he's coming on, by the way. He's learning how to play off weight. He's more effective with his jump shot. But you have some nice components on that team, and you're looking at a second-round playoff team, maybe somebody that throws a scare in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference, takes them to a 7-game series.
I'm terrified of them because if they turn Marion into O'Neal, and whatever, I think O'Neal's the thing that makes him washed up is that he just can't stay on the court. But if they could keep him on the court for 3 weeks, and he's the center instead of Joel Anthony or whatever that dude's name is. And Joel Anthony, and then they move, Beasley to that Marion spot. I don't want to play Dwayne Wade in a first round series. My biggest fear is the Celtics getting like the 3 spot, having to play Miami in round 1, and then having to go against Orlando or Cleveland in round 2 and not have game 7.
Who are you more afraid of right now, Cleveland or Orlando? See, I'll just to finish
Cleveland.
your point, I think Miami can scare you. I really don't think Miami's going to knock off the Celtics. I don't think they have enough veteran guys around.
They wear you down,
though.
though.
Let's say they do that, and it's an entertaining series, and we watch it, just like that Atlanta series was great in the first round last year. Who are you more afraid of the next round or the conference finals, Orlando or Cleveland? I think that's a really interesting question right now.
Well, the Wade thing bothers me because coming off the 108-game season last year and then this regular season where they've had the bullseye on their back for 6 months, then, obviously they'd beat Wade in round 1, or it would maybe be a 6-7 game series, but they'd probably win it. You're still putting miles on yourself for round 2. And whether it's Orlando or Cleveland, it's still going to be a bloodbath. I don't want to play LeBron at all at any point. I just think he's the best guy in the league. Orlando is frightening. And I know they're peaking right now, and things are coming together, and everybody's kind of on to the whole Orlando thing. I want to see them do it for more than a month, or a month and a half.
The thing with them, I think they've proven enough on the upside. Coming into LA and winning. They swept the Spurs series as well. Obviously, they've played Boston well the last year and a half. I was talking to Stan Van Gundy when they were out here. I said, okay, as your team arrived, is this it? Are you proving you're one of the elite now? Can we stop all the questions? He said, well, the one thing is I want to see how we handle a bad stretch, like what Boston went through. And you've seen Boston got out of that funk, and they seem to right themselves. And now I think the Celtics are the Celtics again. I think so. He sounds like he's a little concerned about his team's psyche and how it would respond to some adversity. And that really is a true test of any team. We haven't seen the Lakers really put through that test. You're going to see them on the road a lot in February and March. They've had a ton of home games. It seems like every other day I'm driving to Staples Center. I'll be there tonight. They're playing the Clippers. How are the Lakers going to respond when they go out on the road for an extended period of time, drop a couple of road games, and now they don't have the comforts of home to return to? But I think we need to see the same thing from Orlando. And what happens when the shots just aren't falling? And that's why I'm not too afraid of them in a 7-game series, because I just think over the course of a 7-game series, the team is not going to beat you from beyond the 3-point arc.
I respect their ceiling. I am properly terrified of them, but they remind me a lot of New Orleans last year, and we see this in the NBA all the time. It's very easy to go from point A to point B, but the hard part is going from point B to point C. And like New Orleans last year, they went from point A to point B, they became a contender. But there's still one more trip you got to make. And I feel like with this Orlando team, they're going to be at point B, and it's going to feel like they might get to point C, but they won't get to point C this year.
And that is on Dwight Howard then, because he's got to be the guy. Dwayne Wade took the Heat, to point C. He caught fire. LeBron certainly looks capable. I mean, I could argue that that just getting that team to the finals against the Pistons a couple years ago, that was a point C for that squad. Can Dwight Howard take over a series or take over a postseason? And then I think he'll be worth every last bit of all the accolades that he receives right now. Well, I'm not sure he's the guy right now. That great of a player, to just dominate a postseason. I mean, it's amazing. I just saw him, come in against the Laker front line and, he out-rebounded Andrew Bynum 20-3. And, you see him developing, he has a sense of what to do with the ball now. You see him gets the ball. He's got pet moves. He's out there working before every game, working with Patrick Ewing. He wants to get better. But let's see if he's the guy that can carry a team through a postseason.
And you brought up Miami. People forget. They had the 2004 playoffs before they made the Shaq trade. They got their feet wet there. I think they made the second round, won a 7-game series. The next year probably would have made the finals if Wade doesn't get hurt. So by 2006 they were ready, and they had kind of gotten their feet properly wet. Orlando has not. And it's a big jump. I know the Celtics, they threw that team together last year and they won the championship, but you had experienced guys who knew what they were. I don't know if these Orlando guys, like I know Jameer Nelson is having a phenomenal season. Like I don't think anybody expected him to be this good. But it's a little different in May and June. Making those 45% of the time threes. I want to see him do it in May.
Well, but if he's going to play, I mean, the one thing I like about him is that, and I talked to him about that. I said, well, what's so better? What'd you work on? And he said, he worked on going to his left. Everybody was forcing him left, so he worked on the ability to drive left. And he might still finish right, but he's at least getting by people now with his left hand. But if he's going to get into the paint, then that's another interior presence. Just like Tony Parker gives you a paint scorer, just like, Iverson, when he was at his peak, was giving you a guy who scores in the paint from the guard position. So that's just like having another post-up threat to go alongside with Dwight Howard. So if he's going to be able to continue to do that against postseason defenses when, things get packed in a little bit, maybe that helps him get to that next step too. I'm thinking conference finals for Orlando.
Yeah, I think unless the Celtics can somehow get to number 2, I think it's probably going to be Orlando and Cleveland. The interesting thing with Orlando is that they have a trade to make, and it doesn't seem their attendance is so bad. I don't think they're going to make it because they have $6 million in expiring contracts. They could definitely get one more guy. I don't think they will. It seems like they're determined to just stick with what they have. I was with you. I have my doubts about Howard, but man, he was great on Friday night. I mean, he was really a monster, and I thought he needed to have a game like that to prove to people like you and me that, hey, maybe this is a real team. Maybe this is a team that can make the finals. See, he destroyed Andrew Bynum. Not that that's the hardest thing in the world to do.
Somebody like Dwight Howard too, because he's so fun. He's got that playful personality. He does that. He's doing Show Enough now from The Last Dragon. I mean, I'm just impressed with a guy that young even knows about The Last Dragon. How come that never pops up in your 80s movies references, by the way? I mean, you've been doing Teen Wolf to death recently. Can we get some Last Dragon references, please?
It's never on. I'm always a prisoner of whatever happens to be on that gets my wheels turning. I watched Teen Wolf again this weekend. I can't get enough of it. Michael...
all-time greatest cable/satellite movie is got to be Pulp Fiction, because no matter what time it is in the movie, you're going to have a great scene coming up, and you don't need the linear progression of the movie because it's a non-linear movie. So anytime you flip on, there's some random scene coming on, and it's going to be one of your favorite scenes in the movie.
I would agree with that, except for one thing: I can't stand Bruce Willis and his annoying girlfriend. So if you come in there in that part, I'm out.
That part's pretty funny too. Whose motorcycle is this?
I don't like her.
Whose chopper is this?
I don't like her, and I'm vindicated by the fact that she was never seen again. If you think somebody might be bad in a movie and then they're never seen again, that means they were bad in the movie. But
you can never seen again. It's funny because I saw Bobby Simmons' name pop up in some trade rumors, and anyone that leaves the Clippers, it seems like they're, you really don't hear from them again. There's always this big thing. Oh, the Clippers never hang on to their guys, but you notice when guys leave the Clippers, they just don't do that well. Elton Brand's now the latest example.
There's a stink on him.
I'd be very, very wary of signing a free agent from the Clippers.
Well, do you think that there's a stink that goes with just playing for a perpetually pathetic franchise, or that maybe we have just completely overrated all the guys who have been on the Clippers? Because I'm leaning toward the latter.
I can't figure it out because to excel in an environment like that when you're losing all the time, you have to show a great degree of professionalism. And you think by putting a guy with that type of work ethic on a better team, he would flourish. But Bobby Simmons, I mean, have you heard his name twice since he left the Clippers?
Well, he got hurt. He did blow out his knee.
And that's part of the problem, too. It seems like a lot of times guys get hurt when they leave the Clippers. Utah Jazz, too. A lot of guys don't leave the Jazz and do well. Maybe Howard Isley was one example, but not too many guys leave the Utah Jazz and do well.
Well, and to that same point, when people leave the Clippers, they have this artificially high value, and it takes a year for it to correct itself. You even saw it with Darius Miles. That guy, he got traded straight up for Andre Miller. When you think about that now, it's like
in assists.
Yeah, you think and I know Andre Miller was terrible at the Clippers, but wow. You talk about trading somebody just on their potential and not anything they actually did.
Maybe that was the worst trade of the last decade.
That could have been.
That's pretty bad, but it didn't work out for the Clippers. I mean, if they had done it, let's say the Andre Miller that we're seeing with the Sixers, if that guy had been traded for Darius Miles, or if he played like that after the trade, then I think he'd lift it up there. But the problem is, he came down. It was weird. I mean, he had a lot of family stuff going on out here. This is one reason why you're wary of, having guys come back to their hometown. Like, this woman was calling my voicemail when I was at the LA Times and leaving these messages and saying she was Andre Miller's aunt and that, he was, ignoring her and that she should give her money. So, when you've got stuff like that going on, there's a reason you don't play very well. And I think there's a lot of stuff like that was happening when he was out here, and that's why he didn't flourish with the Clippers. And he just didn't fit. I mean, that was like a young hip-hoppy team. He had Quentin Richardson, Darius Miles, and those guys. And that wasn't Andre Miller. He was a real quiet guy. He wasn't wearing throwback jerseys like everybody else in that locker room. And he just never fit in.
Was he from here?
Yeah, he's from Watts.
Oh, that's right. When I was working for Jimmy's show, we did this piece where, and it's on YouTube. It's really funny, I think. Quentin Richardson basically gives us a tour of the Clippers parking lot in every guy's car and rates the cars. So, and he was popular in the team, and different guys were like, yeah, sure, I'll be in it. So we went over to Andre Miller, and we were like, hey, Andre, you want to be in this piece? And, he was already had this pissed off look on his face. He was like, man, I ain't doing nothing for the Clippers. And just walk by us.
Also, did he have a cool car or not? See, I can't imagine Andre Miller with a cool car.
We never saw it because he left and he stormed out. That was it. It was done and done at that moment. So, and I remember thinking,
cool cars. You had to love the presidential limo yesterday. I mean, we got black president. He's rolling on 30-inch rims. Just, he's got the smooth presidential limo.
It was nice, but I got to ask you, everybody's talking about how much change and progress and how great it was, but at the same time, here's this presidential limo that has 5-inch bulletproof glass.
Well, and the other thing
nervous.
too is when, he got out, we have talked about, wow, how far the country has come, they've elected a black president. But what happened? The first thing when he got out of that limo, you're like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't get shot.
And you know what? I was talking to Whitlock about that today. That's been like this underlying thing with this whole Obama presidency is everybody's so anxious to say, this proves how far we've come, we've elected a black president, and yet everybody is secretly terrified all the time this guy is in open air, and he's driving around this limo and the announcer's like, casually mentions, 5-inch bulletproof glass. I'll feel like this country's made it when our black president could ride around in a convertible.
Convertible, yeah. We've got
and maybe that'll never happen.
Until we get to that point. But, no, it's sad and scary, but I think with any president now, I mean, there's so many wackos out there. That's why,
yeah, I guess
people talk about the uplifting and how great it was to see him up there. And I mean, I do want to give one highlight of the Bush presidency because I remember 9/11 afterwards in the aftermath when he threw out that first pitch at Yankee Stadium, and we felt so vulnerable as a country at that time. And, everything seemed like a security risk. Going to a restaurant, going to the mall, you're just afraid something was going to blow up. And to see him walk out by himself to the mound, and I was terrified of that. I was like, well, please, somebody don't shoot the president. And to deliver that pitch, and that was like one of the first times you started to feel a little bit better about our country again. And, it was just a small symbolic moment, but, it felt like it was an act of bravery and an act of defiance in the face of the terrorists. And, so that was a small scale, but yesterday was a really enlightening and just hopeful. And so many people now feel invested in the country again. And I kind of want to address, a lot of people saying, well, I'm always proud of my country. I don't see why I'm any prouder of the country today. I was proud of the country yesterday and the day before that. But it's like, to compare it to one of the other big events of the week, it's like the Arizona Cardinals making the Super Bowl. You watch the Super Bowl every year, but if you're a Cardinal fan, you never felt like that applied to you. You'd never consider, buying tickets, airline tickets to go to the Super Bowl because there was no chance your team was going to be there. So why even bother caring about it? And I think for African Americans, for years, it felt like the system didn't involve us. There really wasn't, an equal opportunity for people to aspire to the highest office in the land. Mm-hmm. And now those rules no longer apply. And that's what you're seeing. It's an investment. It's an involvement in the game. It feels like, everything that's written about all the ideals of the country, they apply to everybody now. And I think that's what you got. That's why you saw 2 million people on the mall yesterday.
Nice way to put it. Speaking of your point about Bush.
Just saying that because I managed to get the Arizona Cardinals in the conversation about Barack Obama.
No, I thought that was really well done. I agree with everything. To your point on Bush, I agree. Greatest moment of his presidency, and the thing people forget is that he threw that strike with the bulletproof vest. Which, if you've ever seen a bulletproof vest, the fact that he threw a strike with a bulletproof vest, I want to see how many people can actually do that. It's a very short list.
Play hoops with a bulletproof vest? Do you think, let's say there's like an outdoor pickup game he wants to get into, but, Secret Service has their concerns. That's the thing. Like they're talking about, is the court going to be indoor or outdoor? If they put a court in the White House, do you think it'll be indoors or outdoors?
It will absolutely be indoors. There will be 1,000 security cameras and
that 8-inch steel armor around it.
Yeah, and everybody who plays with him will have some sort of security check background. I feel bad for him because the bottom line is his whole basketball playing experience for the last 2 years and the next 8 is a lie. Nobody's going to guard him. Nobody's going to be physical with him. Like he's living this lie. It's ridiculous.
You know what he needs to recruit then? Dennis Rodman, because Magic always talks about the that great game in Orlando when he came back. He'd retired, because of HIV, and then he comes back and he plays. He's voted in by the fans.
Yep.
And he said the moment that he most enjoyed was when Dennis Rodman got on because Rodman played him. Rodman's fearless. I mean, who knows what Rodman could have been carrying in himself that day. But, Rodman just really bumped with him, and that's what Magic wanted. He wanted somebody to play with him, not just to, stand 10 feet away from him. So I think if you brought in Dennis Rodman, he wouldn't be afraid.
I don't think Rodman's getting
to the president.
I don't think he's getting past security. Yeah, but let's say it's a 3-on-1 and Obama's on the wing on the left, and you have to break it up, and he gets the ball. There is no way you're coming within 3 feet of him. You're throwing up the old hands and be like, "Hey, take that layup, President. You have it."
Here's the thing: do you think are they going to have referees, or is it call your own foul?
It's going to be referees who are also Secret Service men with shotguns.
So it's going to be like Dwayne Wade in the 2006 finals all over again. He's going to hit every single call.
This could be Bennett Salvatore's next job. calling every foul for President Obama. Hey, one thing, what you talked about, how what this means to African Americans, and this proves to them that their ceiling now includes the White House and all that stuff. Do you feel like this is a little bit of the cousin of what happened with the O.J. trial verdict in that, it wasn't like people were happy that he had been acquitted. It was that for once an African American had beat the system.
Because, the same thing happened with, let's say, Phil Spector out here. Gun goes off in his house and there's a dead B-movie actress and he gets off and, there wasn't uproar about that, because he could afford good lawyers.
Yep.
The bottom line is that it should be equal, that, regardless of your politics, I think we all can agree Obama ran a better campaign.
Yes.
And you can argue maybe our system's messed up, maybe it should be the best candidate and not the best campaign. But I think we all can say Obama ran the best campaign, just like Bush ran the better campaign against Kerry in 2004. There's no doubt. Kerry was just playing from behind the whole time. Bush ran a better campaign. Obama ran a better campaign. So the fact is that, okay, race was not the factor. The fact is the guy who ran the better campaign won. And that's all that's been asked, is that let's let it be equal. My whole thing is never, it's like when you talk about hiring coaches, African-American coaches in the NFL or college football. It's not about hiring somebody because he's black. It's about all the times that somebody has not been hired because he's black. You can tell me Tony Dungy wasn't ready for a job years before the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hired him.
Right.
And you tell me that these NFL teams wouldn't have been better hiring a Tony Dungy than some of these other retreads that got hired again and again and again ahead of him. So, that's what the fight has been for. Don't hire me because I'm black. Hire me, it's about don't not hire me because I'm black.
Right.
And that's been the fight, and that's what happened here. Barack, it's not that he won, it's that he didn't get voted against when he ran the better campaign. If somebody runs a better campaign, they should win. In this case, the guy who ran the better campaign won the election.
And that's been my argument all along with, and I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, but for the Republicans to play the whole thing, whoa, just wait till you get in the White House. He'll have no idea what he's going to do. It's like, well, we just had a 15-month litmus test of how this might go with how he ran his campaign. Running the White House is an extension of how you run your campaign. It's finding the right people to surround yourself with, coming up with a plan and executing it. And he just did that better than anybody. So I actually feel pretty good about him in the White House.
I do, but part of me says, man, I don't know. You know, he just got the Cincinnati Bengals of presidency. I mean, I don't know who could do a good job given these circumstances. You know, even amid all the optimism in Washington yesterday, the Dow was down 300. You know, in New York. You know, but let's see. You know, and the important thing again is that he got the chance. And really, it's not. You know, he's not going to change Washington. There's too much stuff that's. You know, it's too institution. You know, there's too much history there to change. There's too much, you know, bureaucratic gridlock to get through. So he's not going to change the world. We've already seen his first stimulus package. You know, the Republicans are sniping at it. The Democrats are sniping at it. You know, I mean, it's going to be politics as usual. One man and one administration is not going to change that. But it did show the change in our country. And, you know, now you've got, you've got white people who can believe that, you know, African American is capable of leading. You've got African Americans who believe that, you know, if they do everything right, they'll, you know, get a fair opportunity. So it's the change on the outside. It's the change that affected all the people you saw, you know, the kind of anonymous faces that were out there, that sea of people in the mall, and really not the people that were up there on top of the steps of the Capitol. You know, since I was thinking about Colin Powell, I was looking at him and thinking, you know, I wonder if he's one of the, you know, this could have been him if he would run. And it would have been an interesting litmus test because, you know, I think Republicans loved him before, you know, he kind of jumped off the ship and supported Obama this year, but he's very popular among Republicans. But would African Americans have gotten over their prejudices and voted for a Republican?
Here would be my response to that. There's something cool about Obama. There's a charisma that he has that I don't think Colin Powell has. And I don't know, you even watched Obama in the inauguration ball last night, and the way he handles himself with the likes of Beyonce and Jamie Foxx. He clicks with all these different demographics that go from, you know, not just like the stuffy Washington people, but poor people, athletes, celebrities.
We know
it's
why he was
amazing.
successful, because whatever you want him to be, he seems capable of doing that. You know, everyone puts their projections on him. You know, and it's funny because, you know, African Americans eventually embraced it. And let's not forget, this wasn't a thing where everybody automatically jumped on his side. You know, in 2007, you know, among the African American community, Hillary Clinton was leading over Barack Obama. So this wasn't a situation where, you know, the first black face that black people saw, they went ahead and voted for him. I mean, he had to win them over too, in addition to winning over, you know, the population at large. But, you know, by 2008, people, you know, African Americans saying, this is our guy. You know, he's one of us. He's the black candidate. But if you looked at his campaign, if you looked at the commercials, every time he was up on a stage, there were no black people around him. You know, because he knew he couldn't run as a black candidate and win over the white voters. So, you know, it's funny, black people embraced him even though there was no, you know, he didn't surround himself. He didn't embrace blackness in the campaign, because that would have been a losing strategy. But, you know, white people saw what they wanted to see in him. You know, he's someone like, you know, he went to Harvard Law School. He went to Columbia. So whatever people wanted him to be, he seemed capable of being that. And I think that's why he won. And kind of getting back to what you said about O.J., you know, you brought that up. And I think the reason why this latest O.J. verdict in the Las Vegas case wasn't the racial flashpoint that the 1995 verdict was, you know, now that we have bigger issues. One thing I like is that our society has moved on a little bit. And I love the fact that he's a celebrity. And let's face it, he's turned into a celebrity. He's to Time and Newsweek magazines what Princess Diana was People magazine. You put him on the cover and everything's sold. I went out this morning to go buy a newspaper. He saved the newspaper business. Right. You know, at least on certain days, you know, I mean, try to find a New York Times today. You can't. But, you know, so now we have real racial issues rather than this kind of symbolic, which was what O.J. was in 95. You know, we moved beyond that.
For me, the race part with Obama is not even like one of the top three most fascinating things about him. Like, as you said earlier, he's this guy that can mean something different to each person, which I can't remember having seen that happen before. He's somebody that, you know, in the span of 2 hours can hang out with Ted Kennedy, Jay-Z, Dwight Howard, Allen Iverson, and Ray Romano. Like who do we have in this country that can, is that like, you know, amorphous basically?
Well, but that's the new generation, and it's interesting to him because he's not quite baby boomer, he's not quite Generation X, but in some ways I think he leans a little more toward Generation X because, you know, that, you know, a white kid growing up in the suburbs today, they got a Iverson jersey on or something, and they've got the Wu-Tang Clan and Jay-Z in their iPod. That the lines are being crossed all the time among younger people. So in that sense, he's somebody who's comfortable being in a bunch of different situations. And I think, again, that's another example for African Americans is that, sometimes you have to go places where there aren't other black people. And the same should go, you should go where people like you aren't. And I think that enriches anybody's lives. And, so he's someone who has done that, but he hasn't lost track of where he came from. He lived in Hyde Park. I used to live in Hyde Park when I was in Chicago. It's the most diverse neighborhood in Chicago. There's other parts of Chicago. It's growing up in L.A., you see Latinos all over the place. In Chicago, you don't see them except in certain parts of Chicago. Same thing, like the Asian population is only within certain neighborhoods. It was a very segregated city, but he lived in the more diverse part of Chicago. And I think that's why a lot of people also feel like they can, don't you feel like someone who knows him? Don't you feel like you're only 2 degrees from Barack Obama?
I am. I went to Holy Cross with somebody who's a speechwriter.
Yeah,
I think everybody has someone like that.
He used to get his haircut at the same place I got my haircut in Hyde Park. The guy to cut my hair cut Barack's hair. So it's 1 or 2 degrees of separation, and we're not the only guys. It seems like I know so many people that are within 2 or 3 degrees, not even 6. It's 2 or 3 degrees of him.
Well, and the other, another thing that I think is more interesting than the race part is that his relationship with his family and his wife and his kids is so genuine. And I feel like we can tell. And I know it's like a surface thing and you're just kind of watching somebody from afar, but we've seen so many dysfunctional families in the White House and so many dysfunctional celebrity families and celebrities pretending to be married and all kinds of weird stuff. And yet here's this family that these 2 daughters are they're right out of a sitcom.
Very Cosby-esque. Right?
They really are. I mean, they really could have tested for Rudy Huxtable and probably gotten hired. And
the shot of the day was Sasha giving a thumbs up to her
right.
dad.
And then, the way he interacts with his wife, even last night I was watching the inauguration gala and he goes up, he's like, how about my wife? Is she beautiful or what? And it's genuine. If Bill Clinton said that, we would have been like, come on, man, stop it. Stop trying to force this.
Exactly. And I think that's why there was, because it was more genuine. Because when Clinton was elected, he was the first real baby boomer elected. So, I think younger people, because I was texting with somebody last night about this, how, he said he wasn't this excited when Clinton got elected.
Right.
And Reagan inspired a lot of hope and excitement on the right, but there hasn't been this sort of universal, appeal. And it's because it's with no reservations. With Clinton, maybe you are excited about some of his ideals, but even by the time he got to the White House, there was so much baggage, and affairs and this and that, and you couldn't feel like you could wholeheartedly, believe in the guy. And Barack is somebody that you just feel like, okay, I think we're getting what we see, and he has been, they couldn't really get any dirt on him.
No.
It was his pastor or it was, the guy that, helped fund his campaign way back when or somebody whose living room he was in, but it never came back to him and what he did, which is one of the reasons he had to run right now. And the other reason, you talk about his family, you wait 10 years, I don't care how good, Sasha and Malia are, what good kids they are, there's going to be some sketchy MySpace pictures of them or something that would,
right.
Them hanging out with a beer or something, and something would have gotten out in this day and age, especially. If you can have teenage daughters, you're trying to run for the presidency. In this day, there's going to be some blog that they post or some pictures of them, and it would have been a huge campaign distraction. But at this age, when they're this young and they can't really get into trouble, that's another reason he had to run right now.
Yeah, and
remember the Bush twins were always showing up at bars, when they were underage.
Yeah. You brought up Clinton, and I loved him in college, and I was always hoping he'd run. And then when he did run, and as stuff kept unfolding, and by the time he got to the White House and he's with his wife, we were all so dubious of them. You got this feeling that Clinton was just going to say anything he possibly could to get elected, and he was clearly a shrewd politician. But really, Obama is just as shrewd, and I feel like he's just as good and just as sleek of a politician. But at the same time, he has this genuine underbelly to him that I think Clinton has if you're his buddy, but the whole thing with the wife not totally being sure how real it was, I really think that killed him. I really do. It's just there's something missing with that. And I to me, the Obamas are like the mom and the dad in Friday Night Lights, where, that's my favorite relationship on the show. I love the parents. I love the way they interact with the kids. It's real. I can identify with it. And I can kind of identify with Obama. I feel like I'd be the same way if I was the president. I'd say the same thing about my wife. So.
Well, and again, I think, the key is that's coming from a white person, and white people can identify with him. Black people can identify. I literally, my mother was white, father African, so I mean, right then and there we've got that in common. But just, again, we lived in the same neighborhood. Regardless of what it is, I think you can see something of yourself. Maybe it's your family relationship. By the way, since you guys can't see Bill's Facebook page, I'm going to tell you this is the way it should be for like anyone who has kids. Bill's Facebook page is all about his kids. It's just pictures of him and his kids all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think if you have kids, your Facebook should be all about your kids and not about you out in bars and clubs. I hate that when I see people who have kids and there's all these pictures of them hanging out at all these parties and you never see any pictures of the kids. That's real sketchy to me. But I'm getting back to the topic.
Wait, hold on. I got one thing. We talk about identifying with Obama. For me, it's the way he deals with his family, but then the secret smoking. I know he's still smoking. He can deny it all he wants, but I know he's going to have a butt in the I know he had a butt in the White House balcony last night. He loves The Wire. He loves basketball. I feel like this is somebody I potentially could have been friends with in another life, and I've never felt that way about a president before.
The sad thing is that now you never will. Right. I mean, this is somebody you'd like to, but now there's so many bars like, I was talking to Mike Wilbon, who, he's met with him. Him and Charles Barkley did a chapter in the book with him. Yeah. So he knows him. He had his number, but he's just like, I could call him. I can't call him now. You just can't do it. He'll probably, I don't know, maybe Obama will come on the show on PTI or something at one point. I can certainly see him doing it, but there's just too much to do right now. It'd be enough just being a president, but being a president right now with all this stuff going on, I don't think, he can do PTI or something like that. You can't hang with him. But
well, I was wondering, the inauguration stuff last night, obviously a hot ticket. Every celebrity wanted to be there. Do you think part of his day was like, hey, Barack, Jamie Foxx wants to know if he could be +4 instead of +2? Like, do you think that was like 4 hours of his day yesterday? Hey, Beyonce wants to know if Jay-Z can bring his cousin. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. Squeeze him in.
Sign him up. Bring him in through the back door.
But it was basically like a Super Bowl party. It was like Maxim.
Well, that concert on Sunday, I mean, that was like the Academy Awards meets the Grammys. I mean, we figured you had 4 Oscar winners there, right? You had Jamie Foxx, Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks, Forrest Whitaker's got one, right?
Well, name me an African American athlete or actor or singer who has not attached himself to Obama in some way over the past week.
Even it's funny because like Magic Johnson and Antonio Villaraigosa, mayor of LA, they were both in Hillary's camp and. They were there in Washington. Everyone, showed up. But I think, again, that's one of the cool things about Barack Obama is that he said, you know what, bygones we got. Maybe you weren't with me every step of the way, but, the important thing is you're here now. You saw John McCain up there with him.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's kind of cool that it's not this kind of vendetta. You might not get a plum position in the cabinet if you didn't have his back the whole time, but you're not going to be excluded. And again, I mean, yesterday was for everybody. The weekend, all the events, it was for everybody. And you've heard a lot of people, I've talked to people who will say, well, I voted for McCain, but, I hope he does well. We're all in this together. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like in fantasy, if you draft somebody who's on the team that you despise, you have no choice but to root for them now because you have a vested interest in seeing him and his team do, if you got a pitcher, if you drafted a pitcher on the Yankees, right, you got to hope the Yankees win when he's pitching. So, I think that's kind of how everybody feels about this is that, even if you didn't vote for him, you have to hope he does well.
Quick question.
For peace and prosperity.
Was Jordan there last night? Because I didn't see him.
I wonder if just the fact that Jordan has a thing about going to Washington because things ended so badly with him with the Wizards. I wondered if the thing had been happening anywhere else but Washington, you probably would have seen MJ all over the place. I really don't think he's been back in that city since, that famous shot of him driving out of the parking garage at the MCI Center after Abe Poland just kicked into the curb.
See, I have a different theory. I think he's jealous of Obama. I think Jordan had basically top dog status in the African American community at all the celebrities for like 25 years. And now Obama's just blown him out of the water. Obama has replaced him, and I think he didn't go yesterday. If he didn't go, which he might have, but I'm assuming that he didn't. I think he didn't go because he's a little threatened.
I mean, you've seen everybody. I mean, you've seen basically the equivalents of Jordan, Tiger, and Muhammad Ali. You both saw them pop up this weekend.
Tiger was never as big as Jordan. I'm sorry.
No, and I mean that it kind of gets to the column I had last week, but I mean Tiger's the closest thing we have now for sure.
Closest thing, but not.
I think if you had to rank them all time, I think it's Ali, Jordan, Tiger.
But I put Obama higher now, though. Yeah,
but that's what I love, the fact that the model, everyone wants to aspire to be, an African American, in the African American community especially, it's a man in a suit with a law degree from Harvard. That's the new target. It's not a guy in shorts. It's not a guy with a golf club. It's a man in a suit with a law degree from Harvard, and now he's the president of the United States. And again, these are the things that I take from this. More so, he's not going to change the world to change the way Washington works, but it'll change perceptions and attitudes, and it'll change everyone else around. And again, I love that. I love the Myron Rolle story with Florida State. This guy. It's funny. I was on the treadmill. There's an older African American man next to me, and he's got ESPN on the screen and talking about Myron Rolle and Rhodes Scholarship, and he points to him. And he goes, "Rhodes Scholar." And then he says, he's just so proud.
Yeah.
And he says, we need to have this man talk to Pac-Man.
Right.
I said, you know what, Pac-Man, I think he needs a Rhodes Scholar or a Nobel Prize winner. You're going to have a lot to straighten out Pac-Man, but I think we're headed in the right direction.
Random thought: doesn't Will Smith get like a raw deal in this whole discussion? This guy's the biggest movie star on the planet. You never hear him mentioned. You never hear him mentioned in any historical context.
The next Will Smith, because Will Smith came up at a time when it was cooler to be, who am I thinking of? 50 Cent or somebody.
Right.
Where if you're Will Smith and you grew up in the suburbs and you had a high SAT score, that wasn't considered cool. Will Smith was kind of never accepted, even though all these rappers talked about rich and I'm paid and I got this, and Will was making way more money than any of them.
Anybody.
But he wasn't held up as the ideal. And especially, I think Will Smith never got the credit he deserves. All these guys that made money in rap the last 15 or so years, they all owe Will Smith, because the first rap song I ever heard on a, FM pop station that was non-hip-hop was Parents Just Don't Understand.
Well, why doesn't he get the credit then? Because he crossed over from rap to mainstream. He's the most successful movie actor of the past 10 years. He's made the most money. He has the highest batting average.
Because he didn't do it in the way that was considered cool.
But why isn't it cool?
Because we had this misguided notion that, unless you had 3 bullets in you and 8 tattoos, that you weren't authentic and you weren't real. And again, that was working against Barack Obama. There was an incredible story in the Wall Street Journal, again, it's 2007, when, remember, the story was, is Barack black enough? And there was a study that basically showed that, the lower the educational level, the less likely, people were to vote for, African Americans were to vote for Barack Obama. And there was this quote from this one guy that says, well, I don't know if he really represents me, and, I don't know if he feels the way that I feel. He's like, I really can't get with him. I'm thinking, okay, well, how's your way working out? All I know is, he did it his way. He went to Columbia, he went to Harvard, and now he's in the running for president of the United States. How's your way working? And, I think that's what people realize, is that, what, we can try it this way. And that's why this is a triumph for America, because this is going for the system. And that's why it was absurd that, all this talk about, he's not patriotic, he doesn't wear a pin, he doesn't, say the Pledge of Allegiance. What is more patriotic than an African American saying, I sincerely believe that if I run for president, enough people will vote for me that I can win this? I have that much belief in the American people that I think they will vote for an African American to be the president. It was an extremely patriotic and a brave act, because as we talked about, he's certainly more at risk, for one of the lunatics out there than some of the other presidential candidates we've seen.
Right.
So, but now I think there's a belief in the system now, and in doing it Barack's way, because the way to get rich was to play along with the game. It's just like in the 70s, the black roles we saw on TV were Huggy Bear, I mean, that's why the Cosby Show, you can credit Bill Cosby and everybody for getting us to this moment. We got us away from the Huggy Bear personas, And now we've got more, doctors, lawyers, Blair Underwood on LA Law. All these things were steps to get here to just change the mindset and to think, okay, black people aren't people who shoot baskets and, hang out on the corners and do that. They're lawyers and doctors too, and now they're presidents even.
Would you throw in some of the sports media guys we've had, like Wilbon?
I think you can throw that in.
Ralph Wiley?
It's progress. When I came up in the business, there were like 5 black sports columnists. So, you didn't have, all the voices out there describing what was going on and, putting their spin and their take on things, what was going on. There were only 5 black sports columnists in the country. When I got mine at the LA Times, I think I was number 13. Think about what a small number that is. And,
it was such a small number that Ralph Wiley sought out each person.
Yeah, and guys before him, but yeah, we all knew each other. I love once it got to the point where I see, there'd be a black sports columnist somewhere. I pick up a paper or go online and see it, and I didn't know the guy. Now that was progress. That's where we want to be, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to know everybody. It's just like, I was the first black sports columnist at the LA Times, and it's funny. I'm more proud of it now. Like when I look back, and it's kind of what you said. I think we are part of the progress, part of this road that's got us here. But I was, when I wasn't proud of it when I got hired because I thought I was born in 1970. I shouldn't be the first black anything, but this should have happened long before me because there certainly were plenty of more qualified people before I came along, but they never got the opportunity because, that's just not the way things work then. But, it's amazing when you put this in the context. I was just walking to get a paper yesterday. I bought more papers in the last 2 days than I have in like the last year. But I was walking down the store and I saw, a school bus, and I was thinking about, all these attempts to kind of get things right, busing in the 60s and 70s. And then, there was a little thing that said Rosa's Chocolates. It was this little kind of homemade chocolate company. And just seeing the name Rosa, and it made me think of Rosa Parks. And all these little steps that it took to get to the point that we had yesterday, and everyone can take credit in it. And, everyone helped get us to this point. And I thought about my small role in some way. There was some, aspiring young black sports writer who came up and saw me, just like I saw Mike Wilbon and Brian Burwell and Ralph Wiley ahead of me. So I think we all need to stop and kind of look at the role that we took and the steps that we made, and then I think we need to see, okay, how are we going to take this forward? How are we going to solve all the problems that are afflicting our country right now?
That's a good way to end it, because we have to go anyway, because we have to give up the podcast studio.
Sorry if it's a little heavy, but, I think
I loved it.
Inspirational as well, and let's apply this, and it certainly applies to sports, and sports gets a lot of credit, and, we certainly see a lot of sports metaphors in this new administration, and I don't know, I'm excited. It's a real exciting time, and great time to get back to our topic. It's going to be a great NBA season, too, so let's enjoy it all this season.
Well, that's why I wanted to have you on, because I know this week meant so much to you. Next time you come on, we'll make up some fake NBA trades, and it'll be a lot less weighty. But thank you so much for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
All right, thanks. Wanted to mention that you can read J.A Adande on our own, ESPN.com. He writes some excellent NBA stuff. Check him out. He had a really good piece about Michael Jordan last week that I urge you all to read about the 10-year anniversary of Jordan's retirement. And one more thing, I wanted to wish a get well to Joe Meade, who took not one, but 2 sick days. I really hope he has like pneumonia or something, because to take 2 sick days, in my opinion, is inexcusable. I actually had a special Joe Meade reader email bag today where I was going to read 2 emails and make fun of him, but he didn't show up. So hopefully he'll show up next week. The B.S Report will be back next week. We're either going to have 2 or 3. We have the big Super Bowl podcast coming up and a whole bunch of other good stuff. So we will see you then.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the B.S Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.